Hi guys, more list reviews today, back by popular demand. Great response to the original list review video, so I'm hoping to do these once a month as long as there is demand for them. I appreciate everyone who submitted lists this time. We've got 4 more today. I think this is everyone who submitted a list. If I have missed you, I really apologize, and I will be sure to get you in the next round. As always, a few disclaimers before we get started. Number 1, most importantly, this is just my opinion. I've played the game for about 5 years, most of that at a competitive level, but I also don't know everything. And so any advice I give, take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to approach these from a competitive lens, unless you specifically tell me otherwise, which I really appreciate the people who in their comments told me what kind of level they're playing at and where they want the list to be. That helps inform how I look at things, but unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to look at it from a tournament list perspective. So I'm going to be talking about optimizations and stuff like that. And lastly, if you just disagree with something I say about your list, don't pay me any attention. Keep playing it the way you are. The game is about having fun, and if I'm just really wrong about something going on in the list, you can let me know about it in the comments. I would also love to hear those of you who, if I've given feedback, if you've played the lists with any changes, let me know how those go. I'm always interested to hear about that. And then lastly, just to go over, I am going to be thinking about, like I said, doing these once a month. If you have more submissions, obviously, please put them in the comments or hit me up on Discord. If these continue to be popular, I'm happy to do them. If you have your own lists, and I also want to put out, if you've seen other lists that you liked or that you're interested in, and you want me to talk about other lists, whether that's something you've seen in a tournament do well, and you want to hear my take on it, or you want me to pick a random list from my own list builder, let me know about that. I am happy to go over those. Or if you just have an archetype you generally like me to try to build out and talk about, I'm happy to do that as well. But enough time wasted. Let's get into the first one. We've got 2 Republic lists and 2 Empire lists today. So Rebel and CIS fans, I'm sorry. But hopefully, you find this interesting. Maybe you get some ideas. So our first submission here is from, I believe it's Killy Van JG2813. I don't know how to say a lot of these usernames. I apologize. I'll do my best. I'm going to read off any context that the people submitted with, and then we'll go card by card and talk about the list as a whole. So this is actually an interesting situation where this particular player had submitted a list originally pretty much right after the first video, and then just 3 days ago commented again and said that they had tried that list, done pretty well with it, but they made some changes. So I'll just go off of some of the things they've said. He said, I've made some changes. One thing I would potentially like is for the Venator to have boosted comms, but the whole point of the list was the 8 squad activation Alpha Strike. I have also recently found out about the glory of reactive gunnery peltas, and man, have I caught the salvo pelta bug. That is understandable. I don't feel that running the transport pelta impacts my squad pushing capabilities, because the clone nav pelta can squad dial turn 1, turning it into a token, plus passing a token to the Ven, which still allowed 10 activations in 1 turn. Additionally, the Hondo token plus dial can push 3 if I really need to do that later in the game. Here's my updated list. Would love your thoughts if you end up reviewing it. So first of all, thank you for your submission. Let's see what you have here. We've got a Venator 2 with Yularen, Flight Commander, Flight Controllers, expanded hangars, thermal shields, linked turbo lasers, and tranquility. And then 2 Pelta transports. First one with Hondo, projection experts, parts, resupply, and reactive. And the second one with clone nav, bomber command center, and reactive. And then we've got some squads here. It's going to be Splashikin, Anakin and the Delta 7 here, Axe, 2 V-19s, and 6 Y-Wings, running Precision Strike, Fleet and Being, Infested Fields. So, my first thoughts when I took a look at this is it totally makes sense that you've been testing and have been working through iterations, because this is pretty well optimized, generally. I don't have a lot of constructive criticism to give here. You're absolutely right that I think the biggest strength of Yularen is his ability to do that 8 squad alpha. I still think that is so underutilized, and people are really don't totally understand how pivotal that can be. A good 8 squad alpha can absolutely decimate your opponent's squads, or really just hit a ship hard if they don't have squads. So I think that's the biggest part, so I appreciate that you mentioned that. You're correct. I think going down to the transports is totally fine. a lot of what they will probably be doing, since Yularen's going to be pushing 8, you'll probably lose 2 of the squads pretty soon after you alpha. So you don't always need to activate 10 in a round, and on the one turn you do, a Pelta can do that just fine with a token. The bigger thing that they're going to do, and you may have already found this in testing, is when I have seen Yularen on the table, the big 8-squad alpha happens, and then a couple squads maybe come back or move, or the Peltas move into range and they start healing them, because Yularen's ability is so annoying. I'll pull them up here for those who don't know. It's that second part. Spend 2 points to choose a friendly squadron at 1 to 3. That squadron recovers 1 hull point. So you can, with the Peltas and a repair token, heal a squad by 3 health, which can be really big, particularly if like Anakin gets beat up a bunch and he's on like 2 or 1 health. Just bring him back, heal him to full, and send him right back in. It can get really, really stupid. So Yularen likes hitting really hard initially and then continually healing up those squadrons so you don't lose a ton of them. It also helps that Republic just have fantastic squads with good hull values. So I think this is a great list. One thing I would maybe think about, and this is a personal preference thing, I totally understand why Flight Commander is here, because you don't have boosted comms. That makes a lot of sense. I think it's hard not to take Ahsoka, because you didn't take her squad. The Ahsoka officer, I've mentioned this, I think the last list submission, we had a couple people talking about the Ahsoka officer. Giving the Y-Wings Snipe 3 and the ability to stay within your flak and shoot out of it, it can be really, really big. Now, that is totally a personal preference thing. I absolutely understand why Flight Commander is there, and that's not something I would, like, for sure change. The only other thing I would look at is thermals are very good, but I think there's more and more accuracy tech coming into the game, and ECMs is somewhat of a consideration. However, you've got Tranquility, and Tranquility is such a stupid card. I'll pull it up for those who are not familiar with it. It's a really, really, really stupid card, and it's really cheap, so I think Thermals is probably the right play. The Reactive Peltas, I like them. They're so annoying. So I think that they're fine to play with. I would caution you against just a playstyle thing of like saving your tokens so you can reactive gunnery them. It's more important generally that your Peltas stay alive. Both of them, because one's got the projection experts, which you'll probably need, and the other one has bomber command. It's particularly important that they stay alive, and so you don't want to not spend a token so that you can reactive. But it seems like you're a pretty skilled player, because this is a pretty good list, so I have to imagine that you wouldn't make those mistakes. So overall, I think this is great. I think your objective suite is good. You have plenty of bombers to take advantage of precision strike. You don't particularly want most wanted. That's kind of always the gotcha for me, is if you should take most wanted instead, but you don't really have a great thing to put it on, so precision makes sense. I like Fleet and Being. I don't know what else you would take for the yellow. Yellow is always the weakest. I'm a big fan of Fleet and Being, so I think that's a great inclusion, and then I think Infested Fields is the auto-include for sure. I think if you took superior positions, no one would ever take it. Taking Infested Fields, maybe you get someone to pick it. So yeah, great list. Thank you for submitting. Our next list here is another Republic one from Air Force Man 34. He has said the following. I have a list below if you'd like to pick it apart. It is more of a thematic casual list, a victory with Svats, a Ven 2, and Y-Wings working together as a fighter bomber with flight controllers. Originally had Oddball in place of Ahsoka because just because it could dual role as well. I'm thinking about potentially dropping engine text for one more Y-Wing. Thank you very much for your submission here. Happy to take a look. And I appreciate that you've stated that this is more of a casual and thematic list. I won't look at it as much of like a tournament optimization point. But to that end, we've got a Venator 2 with Plo Koon, flight controllers, boosted comms, ECMs, and Tranquility. We got a very beefy Victory 1 here with Hondo, engine techs, ordnance experts, SVATs, external racks, and APTs. Pelta transport with clone navigation, projection experts, munitions resupply. Then a smaller squad ball here, we have Anakin, Ahsoka, and 4 Y-Wings taking precision strike, hyperspace assault, and solar corona. So yeah, a couple things to go over here. I don't want to nitpick the list too much since it's a casual thematic thing. I think it's neat that you're getting the Vic 1 in there. It's not seen a ton, so I like it. Um, the big thing that I would point out is you've taken Plo Koon, but you only have 4 squads. Against squadless, these are going to do great. You're going to get a lot of value out of Plo Koon. But against any kind of dedicated squad ball, once Anakin is dead, things could get a little bit ugly. You've got quite a bit of squad investment here with Plo Koon himself, along with flight controllers and boosted. So that's already 36 points in squad-focused upgrades, and you only have 6 squads, 4 of which are generic Y-Wings, which, while very good, particularly with flight controllers, and very efficient, not super great at winning the squad war. Once Anakin and Ahsoka are dead, your opponent's squads are just going to run wild because the Y-Wings are heavy. So, if I'm running Plo Koon, I'm running way more squads. Doesn't always have to be the 134. You can do more of a combined arms thing like you have going on here. But with just this limited number of squads, I think you, against dedicated squad lists, you may struggle to get real value out of them, and you've dedicated quite a few points to that particular thing. I think that this victory, while beefy as heck, is pretty good. I like that you've got this fat with APTs. Engine techs, I think, is kind of a must on the victory, purely because of that speed 2 limitation. It tends to sometimes get into the fight too late and or not be able to run away. So I would definitely keep engine techs in there. I may drop like the racks, maybe. Hard to say. You had mentioned trying to get another Y-Wing in there. That's tough. You could. I'm trying to think of what else I would drop. I may honestly drop the flight controllers. I don't know. Just because your list is fulfilling the combined arms dream that you talked about, like getting fighter bombers and getting the victory in there. But like I said at the top, you may struggle to get a whole lot of value out of your squads and subsequently out of Plo Koon. So tough to say. If you've played this in a few games, I'd love to hear how it's doing for you. Again, I don't want to spend too much time nitpicking it because it is a casual list. The other thing I would say is I would not take Hyperspace Assault. Casual list or not, this is not the play. I think because your thought process is, I assume, that you'll hyperspace into victory, but then you're deploying 2 ships and 6 squads. You have 5 deployments, and the victory is going to come in at earliest round 2. Definitely helps get around the speed problem, that's for sure, but it also could put you way out of position, and Hyperspace Assault itself is not that strong of an objective anyway. So I would maybe look at Fleet and Being. What else would be good? Maybe Asteroid Tactics would help you with the squad war itself. Let Anakin and Ahsoka maybe last a little bit longer. I would just kind of look elsewhere, not Hyperspace Assault. It's just, unfortunately, not a very strong objective right now, and it's too easy to play around, particularly because the victory is your most dangerous ship. So if your opponent is just going to stay away from the victory, they're going to be all right. I would also, the Corona gives you great deployment advantage, and you don't have any anti-accuracy tech, so it does help in that way. I'd be tempted to go Infested Fields for a couple reasons. Number one, you'll always win at least 45 to 30 on that, if not better. Second, you get great battlefield control with moving the obstacles. And lastly, the Exogorths will help your anti-squad battle a ton, which I think your list really needs. So I would maybe give that a try, but if Corona is working well for you, stick with that. But thank you very much for your submission. Let's hop on to an Empire list here. This one is from Matthew Chambers, and he has just discovered your channel, and I love it. Really appreciate the tier lists. Thank you for the comment there, Matthew. I'm also interested in getting some feedback on a list I've been playing around with. I'm an intermediate player who is looking to become more competitive. I generally don't like relying on squads in my lists, and if I could go squadless, I would, but I know that's not really an option. Anyway, here's my list. And then he has some specific questions about it that we'll get to after I go through what we've got. So it's Moff Churgerod with Expert Shield Techs. This is on a Kuat. Expert Shield Techs, Ordnance Experts, Reserve Hangars, ECMs, Point Defense Ions, External Racks, and Relentless. 2 Gazantis, both with Comms Net and Reserve Hangars. We got a Gladiator 1 with Iden, Ordnance Experts, Engine Techs, Rax, and Demolisher, and then a classic Architans with Nita TRCs, and then 2 squads, Sienna, and a generic Interceptor with Advanced Gunnery, Hyperspace Assault, and Corona. Matthew, your specific questions were, number 1, I really like Jerry and Ozzel as commanders. I chose Jerry for extra mobility, but I'm not sure he's the best choice. I also wonder if I have tunnel visioned on these two. Are there any other commanders you think would be a better fit? Number 2, I know the fighter coverage is weak. My goal is to slow down enemy bombers long enough to target a carrier. Do you think this is realistic? I realize I'm relying a lot on the gimmick of bringing back the Interceptor over and over and just throwing it out there on suicide missions. Do you think this is viable, or should I drop the Gazantes and go all rogue? Want to minimize having to give squad commands. I feel that. I absolutely feel that. Number 3, APTs versus external racks. And then number 4, the bid. I feel like this list is okay going first or second. Am I wrong about that? I love this submission, Matthew, if for nothing else because you've provided the list, you've provided your intentions with the list, and the fact that you want to get more competitive. You're an intermediate player, so I can get a handle on skill level, and you have asked some very good specific questions. So I'll go my overall thoughts, and then I'll answer those questions for you. Overall, this list is solid, but it screams pre-1.5. Black Dice ships are not in a great place right now, particularly huge haymakers like the Kuat. The Kuat was really good for a long time. I really loved playing it in tournaments with like Screed or Jerry. But unfortunately, nowadays the Kuat is not amazing. This is a good build for a Kuat. I like pretty much everything about this. But the Kuat itself is just not super good. This is a great Demolisher build. This is one of the versions I like to run, and this is a fantastic Architect's build. It does not get much more efficient than that. Overall, I think this list is pretty good and would do fine at a tournament. I want to answer your specific questions because that's going to tie into some other things I have to say. So your first one, Jerry and Ozzel. I think those are 2 of the best commanders in the Imperial faction. I think I rate both of them top 3, I'm pretty sure. I guess I can just make that statement. I rate both of them top 3. So I think those are both great choices. I don't think that there's a better commander for this list. Screed would have been a consideration a long time ago, but is not now. Thrawn would be pretty good, but he's expensive. I'm trying to think if anyone else is great here. I don't think so. I think it really would just be Ozzel and Screed, right? Because Constantine's a no, Mahdi is very boring and doesn't fit this any better than the other 2. Ozzel maybe, Piet no, Screed no, Sloane no, Vader no, no on Palpatine. Ramadi would be intriguing, but not quite as effective. If you had like 2 or 3 Architans instead of the Gladiator, and maybe an ISD-2 or a Simoon, Ramadi's a conversation, but with this list, I don't think so. No tag. Thrawn is good. I think your list would really like Thrawn, but not at 32 points. And then Tarkin doesn't do a ton for you. So I think you're spot on the money. I think it is a conversation between Ozzel and Jerry. Jerry really comes down to, can you get good use out of him? And this will just be a question for you. Are you skilled enough at piloting these ships to make your ISD dance with Jerry? Because if you're using Jerry once a game, then just take Ozzel, save the 3 points, and you'll use Ozzel way more. However, if you're dancing with Jerry, if you're getting doubles and dodging arcs and getting to places your opponent doesn't think you can, that's Jerry's biggest strength. So if you're doing that, I think Jerry's the better play. If you're not doing that, I would play Ozzel, and that kind of frees up your command stack a little bit more to do things like a cheeky confire or spam repairs, that kind of thing. Your second point here, the fighter coverage is weak. This is a big thing that stuck out to me. You can run squad lists in today's meta, but this particular list is one I think would struggle against squad lists. If you're going to go squad lists, you've got to have a bunch of LTTs and or PDICs. You've only got 1 ship with those. You've got to take stuff like projection experts or EST on a bunch of ships to minimize squad damage. You've got to be able to run, stuff like that. So I think you do need a small squad screen. The biggest thing that pops out to me, I see your gimmick, as you talked about. You've got 3 RHDs, should just keep bringing this interceptor back and throwing it back in. I think save the points, get rid of all 3 of those, save yourself 9 points, and then just take Valen. I think Valen Sienna is so incredibly efficient, and I'm just going to mess with your list a little bit here. We'll bring in Valen. For those of you who don't know what he does, basically, if with the Valen Sienna ball, if your opponent is engaged with Sienna, they can't attack Valen, which is nice because Sienna loves getting attacked because she gets everything obstructed and has counter 2 with a scatter. So I would do that, and I would just get rid of these. And funny enough, you have opened up enough points for something else I wanted to talk about. You can get Prox Mines in there. And or grab yourself like Hondo or something, so you can get Hondo and Prox Mines. These are some small changes I would make, purely because, we'll get to this on your 4th point, but I think Prox Mines makes some sense there. But you don't have to do that. I would just get rid of the RHDs, full stop, and swap out the TIE Interceptor for Valen. I think that is a pretty easy change that'll pay dividends pretty much right away. You don't have to worry about ranges for your RHDs at that point, and Valen Sienna is stupid good for 30 points. Your 3rd question, APTs versus external racks. The answer is external racks. Seems like you're already on to that. APTs just right now are not amazing. They are good if you can throw them at long range. The biggest problem with APTs is, number 1, they're not great against small ships because of evades. Number 2, they're not as good against large ships anymore because of PDICs. So if you can throw APTs outside of close, then they get better value, in my opinion, or if you have 2 ordnance slots. But I think the extra punch from racks is just so good. I think it's the more efficient upgrade for 4 points. I think you'll actually get to use it a bit more. APTs just are kind of struggling in the current meta. So I think racks are definitely the play. And then lastly, bid. I feel like this list is okay going 1st or 2nd. Am I wrong about that? You're not wrong. This is where the proximity mines come into play. So if you make the changes I've suggested here, proximity mines give you a really cool way to mess with your opponent's objectives. If your opponent is bringing particularly abandoned mining facility, you can slap down 2 proximity mines on the dust cloud, and they literally cannot clear them. There's nothing your opponent can do to get rid of the proximity mines on the dust cloud, so they're just going to have to eat them or not farm that dust cloud, which is great for you. That is a little anti-tech thing that you can do, since a lot of people still take abandoned mining facility. 2 proximity mines are also just generically pretty nice to have out there as like a little annoying thing. If you can even get just 1 damage card on your opponent with a proximity mine, you're living large. But you don't have to do this. This is purely just a off-the-cuff suggestion with the points you had available. You could also just drop those hangar decks, take a 7-point bid, and you'll get choice almost every time. There's not a whole lot of lists bidding that high right now. And if they are bidding that high, they're bidding like 10 or 12. So I think that 2nd player is stronger right now. But 1st player is a bit better for black dice ships. You can take 2nd or play with black dice ships effectively as 2nd player. You just have to practice a lot and get good at forking. Demo kind of helps with that because you always get like 1 shot off. You don't have to wait for them to come to you always. So I think you're right. I think your list is totally fine going 1st or 2nd. I would swap out a couple of your objectives. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I don't like Hyperspace Assault. It's a bit better with Demolisher because your opponent can't quite as effectively run away. But I would think about something like VIP maybe, or Asteroid Tactics, just to help you in other ways. Hyperspace Assault, you're going to bring in Demo, which means you're left with 5 deployments. Yeah, because you get 2 squads, which is not a ton, versus 6, which is a bit better. So that's it's purely a personal preference thing with Hyperspace Assault. I just really don't like it. I'm never scared seeing it across the table, no matter what ship is being hyperspaced in. It's just a little tough to get great use out of. The yellow objectives are a lot weaker. That's been a problem for a while. If you take the proximity mines, you don't have a horrible AMF list, Bending Mining Facility. Your list is fine with VIP, I think. Asteroid Tactics, probably not Contested Outpost. Fleet and Being would be all right for you. You've got options. I just think there's better things than Hyperspace Assault. And then the blue one, again, I think your list really appreciates deployment advantage, so I think this is actually a good objective in your list, but I just have such a hard time not taking Infested Fields. You automatically win 45 to 30 at worst, just purely off objective points. You get so much battlefield control, and the Exogorths, for someone who you specifically said you don't want to run squadrons and you don't have a ton of extra anti-squad tech in your list, having Exogorths on the field that you get to control is huge, particularly in Infested Fields, because you get to move the obstacles where you need them. So I would have a really, really hard time not taking Infested Fields. But Solar Corona is also pretty good in this list because you need that deployment advantage, and you don't mind your opponent not getting to use accuracies. So I hope that, now I spent a little longer on this one, I hope that answered your questions. If you get some playtime with this list and make any changes or anything, let me know. I'd be interested to hear about it. Last one we have here, I don't want to go too long here, is Christopher Bryant 9807. Says, "Hey Shyvalry, I love watching your list reviews and learning new ideas. I was wondering if you could pick apart an Imperial list I've been working on. I would really appreciate the insight from a more technical player like yourself." Well, thank you. You give me too much credit there. A technical player. What do we have? We have an ISD Simoon with Tarkin, Krennic, Intensify Firepower, Gunnery Team, Proximity Mines, Linked Turbo Lasers, XI7s, and Sovereign. We've got a Victory 1 with Ordnance Experts, Proximity Mines, QBTs, and Assault Proton Torpedoes. We've got a big ol' Raider with Callus, Ruthless, Quad Laser Turrets, External Racks, and Impetuous, and then a Xanti with Repair Crews and Prox Mines, and Cena Valen. Hey, we were just talking about them. Taking Most Wanted, Contested Outpost, and Solar Corona. So there is a lot I like here, and a lot I don't like. Number one, I love seeing Tarkin on the table, and I think lists that can make good use of his tokens, like this one, are very good. I would like to see a little bit more use of his tokens. You're mainly going to be using him for IF and maybe some NAV tokens. You've got Sovereign on there, which I think is a great inclusion. I think you've got to have Sovereign when you're taking Tarkin. So I like that combo a lot, but you only have one ship that likes the token every single turn. The rest of them could take it or leave it a lot of the time. What you have done is you have freed yourself up from having to take Comsnet or Hondo, which I like a lot. I may still try to fit Hondo in just for the odd turn where you need Tarkin to not hand out Confires, and you want to keep powering IF. Or you have, like, some. I would also think about Comsnet. We'll get to that. We'll get there. I like Krennic on the Simoon. LTT's XI7s is a great combo. I think that's good. Gunnery Teams is also good, but there's something I want to talk about with your cards up here on the ISD. I love Prox Mines. I was just talking about those in the ISD. This Vic is fine. I would maybe go Racks instead of APTs, just as I've already mentioned today. Black crits are not very good right now. But that's a season to taste kind of thing. I think QBTs is fine. I may take XI7s, I don't know. The Vic 1 doesn't really want to slow roll all that often because it's already going to be chugging to get into the fight to begin with. So I may go XI7s there, let it hit a bit harder. Prox Mines is also great. You've got, 5 Prox Mines in this list? That's quite a few. That's going to be annoying. This is something that I want to spend some time on. I love trying to make the Raider flak boat work. I've spent so much time in the list builder trying to make a Raider flak boat that I think really works, and then when I get it on the table, it just doesn't. You have a 64-point Raider here for a ship that is one of, if not the most fragile ship in the game. That's a lot of points to put into it. Now, I like a lot of things about it. You've got Callus. I like that. You've got QLTs, sneaky interaction there. You can Callus on the counter, which is very fun. And you've got Impetuous. Couple things I would change. If you're going to go Flak Boat Raider, man, just go all in. Take Flechette Torpedoes. If you're taking the Raider one, just take the Flechette Torpedoes. The ability to, like, let's say you get the Dream Attack, where you get to flak like 4 or more of your opponent's squads, including some aces in there. If you can flechette torpedoes and like turn off, don't even have to damage. If you can just turn off 3 or 4 of those, that is massive. You have totally neutered your opponent's ability to play the game with those squads for that turn. That is huge, particularly on the QLT if they. Well, I take that back. Not on the QLT because that's going to be a counter. But like with Impetuous, you've got the extra chance, right? So if you shoot something and you don't get the crits for flechettes, freaking shoot it again with Impetuous. It's really, really cool. It's a great, cool thing that the Raider 2 is very proficient at. Callus can get you that 3rd black die against uniques that don't have scatter. Turning off like Lando or like Dutch or any kind of bombers is so big. Because a lot of lists that go 134, if you turn off their ability to deal damage for a turn, that can be huge. I don't know why Ruthless is here. You only have 2 squads to use Ruthless off of, and they have 3 hull each. So I would definitely axe Ruthless and take Ordnance Experts instead and go for the Flechettes. It's going to make your build a teensy bit more expensive. I think this is risky. You have a 64, or excuse me, it got cheaper, sorry. You have a 63 point small ship that is entirely focused on killing opposing squads. But boy, if you get like a good shot with the Raider, that can be huge. So I like this. If you're going to do a flak boat Raider, this is one of the ways I would run it. This is another thing I want to talk about. So Repair Cruise is fine, and you have Tarkin, so on the surface it doesn't seem like you need like Comzen or something. However, you have 1, 2, 3 things that need to be powered by concentrate fires. Now, some of those overlap. For example, if you use a Confire token, you can Krennic and Gunnery teams. If you're going to use a Confire dial, which I would kind of caution against, I wouldn't get greedy with the Confire dials because you have no defensive tech on the ISD, so it is susceptible to getting wrecked. So I would be cautious with Confire unless you're very confident in your ability to move without nav commands and to stay safe, then that's fine. But I would be very cautious about Confire dialing. The timing of things is where it's going to get a little tricky because you need to power this at the beginning of every round. So it's start of ship phase and start of ship phase with Tarkin. So if you don't already have a token on yourself and you Tarkin a token to power IF, you now have no Confire token for Krennic or Gunnery teams if you don't have a dial lined up. What you can do is pick the order of these 3 things. So if you can get yourself a different token, so let's say turn 1 you nav with Tarkin, you nav with Tarkin's ability, and then you can Confire the next turn with Tarkin, use it to power IF, and then Sovereign the token to a Confire, that'll work. You got to remember the timings on this stuff. You have invested a lot in the offensive power of this assignment, so you want to make sure you're maximizing that. So you don't want to end up in a situation where it's like, oh, I would really like to Gunnery team here, but I don't have the Confire dial, and I spent my token on IF. So you just got to kind of work the brain on that. I think it can absolutely work. You have enough going on here. But that's where part of me says, let's just slap Hondo on the Gazanti for emergencies or something like that. Because there will be turns where you may want to Tarkin something that's not a Confire, so if you can just grab something with Hondo, that'd be nice. You've got the points for it. But if you want to keep the bid, I totally understand it. I don't think Hondo is necessary. I think as long as you're doing things correctly, you should have no problem with these. Your objectives here, most wanted, Kano and Solar Corona. I'm going to say it for the 3rd time today, and then I will cease to exist. I think that when you have at least 2 squads, there's no reason not to take Infested Fields. I'm a broken record, but I think that Infested Fields is such a good objective, particularly for lists that are running light squads. You need help in the squad war, and Infested Fields is some of the best help you'll get in the whole game. It also gives you a 15-point advantage by default. So I would strongly consider it over Corona. Again, Corona is a fine objective. You could really use the deployment advantage. So I think it's okay. It also helps you defensively a little bit. but Infested Fields is just so good. So I would maybe give that a try, see how it plays. Contested Outpost is very you've got something that doesn't mind sitting on the outpost and just bombing from afar, but it telegraphs exactly where you're going to be for your opponent. So I think Contested Outpost is just fine, but it could be taken advantage of by good players. So I would play around with your yellow objective, see what speaks to you. Your list doesn't mind going first or second, so I'd just try a bunch of them and see what you like best. Most Wanted is obviously the right choice for your red, so you're good there. I don't know if this is meant to be a competitive list or a casual list or what. I looked at it as a competitive list, but if it's meant to be a casual list, heck, just have fun. That Raider, the way you had built it, is still solid, and I think as a casual thing, that's a lot of fun. Just may struggle to make its points back in a competitive game. But this has been a long one, guys. A bit longer than I had anticipated, but I hope that I provided good feedback on all your guys' lists. If you guys have any questions or follow-ups, obviously leave them in the comments. If you would like to submit a list, even if you've already submitted one, if you'd like to submit a different one or an update to a list you've already done, please go ahead and comment that here or send it to me on Discord. I will try to get to them at some point in January. January is going to be busy with the Vassal World Cup. I'm going to be doing almost all my content, if not all my content, is going to be focused on that. I will be playing in it, so I'm going to do, when they announce pairings at the beginning of the month, I will do a list breakdown of my list and my pod, and then maybe try to get Taserface or anyone else who'd like to join me in here to talk about the World Cup as a whole, look at every pod, make some predictions. That'll be a fun video, looking forward to that. And then I will do battle reports of all of my Vassal World Cup games, even if I get obliterated. Those will not be streamed. Since this is a big tournament, the Vassal World Cup, I prefer not to have the distraction that streams can sometimes have. So I will just be keeping the log files, and I'll do a battle report for each of the games after they're done. I may wait until the end of the pools stage to put out any of the videos. Remains to be seen. But we'll go from there. And then, assuming that I'm not playing in the finals, I will plan to stream it and maybe have some special guests on to do some color commentary. So look forward to all that in January and February. But I will try to accumulate any list submissions throughout January, maybe do a list review in January, and I may just hold that until February or a little bit later. But I'll keep doing these as long as there's demand. So thanks for watching, everyone. I appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your day.